What's up guys? So recently I put out a video where I did sort of a comparison of the Candyman films, the original Candyman film from 1992 and then the Nia DaCosta Candyman film from 2021. And I had a really fun time kind of, comparing the two. Obviously, the 2021 film's a direct sequel. This video will be a little different, but I had a lot of fun doing that. So I thought, being the Halloween season, there's so many remakes that exist and so many reimaginings. Actors have tried to either replicate a feeling of something or use their own interpretation material to create something new. So I thought it'd be fun to do a sort of compare and contrast video, an original film and a remake of a film that I think both movies are very quality, very well made, and that would be Maniac. The original Maniac was released in 1980 and the remake was released in 2012. The films are very different, but they both have very similar goals. And I just thought it would be interesting to kind of talk about each film individually and then sort of sum up at the end the things that I like about them, the things that I don't like about them, why I think they're incredible horror movies in their own right, and just kind of put forth my opinions for both of those. I'm gonna start out by talking about the 1980 Maniac directed by William Lustig. So this movie is kind of notorious for being really grisly, violent, intense. The performance by Joe Spinell, famously, just like, people thought he was genuinely a lunatic after watching this movie. Just how committed he is to this performance and this character of Frank Zito. Background on the movie, it's a very simple plot, but the movie follows Frank Zito, who is a serial murderer. He lives in a small apartment with mannequins, human hair nailed to the top of them. And the movie, essentially from a bird's eye view, follows Frank's character through New York City and just watching him as he sort of plots these murders, picks out these people, and kills them one by one. Kind of just left as an audience member wondering, like, should I be watching this? Am I subjecting myself to this material? But it's also a fascinating character study of a psychopath. There's been a ton of movies about serial killers in the past, and obviously horror films, you have famous slashers that are done a little over the top, and you have really gritty, intense movies that are made that feel more realistic, and this is definitely one of them. Just watched the 1980 Maniac for my first time this year, and it genuinely unsettled me. Joe Spinell's performance as Frank Zito is one of the most terrifying performances I've seen given in a film. You really believe for every second he's on screen that this man is a psychopath. And just his mannerisms, the way he talks to himself, the way he presents himself around other people is just incredibly impressive. The most impressive elements of this movie is watching the parallel between Frank when he's on his own with his mannequins and just the way he speaks, sort of like not confident, but also like commanding of the room. And then when he's with other people and trying to present himself in a public space, he's a really likable, normal seeming person that you just wouldn't suspect to be capable of these brutal murders. Yeah, the big plot point in the 1980 Maniac is he's introduced to this woman, Anna, who's an artist, and he presents himself as well as an artist in the movie. And the two of them start to bond and they go out on dates. And the whole movie you're trying to ask yourself, is the director trying to show Frank in this situation finding something that might change his actions or make him be different? And no, he's a psychopath. Nothing is ever going to change who Frank is as a person or what he's out to do. The intro sequence to this movie is so insane. You're dropped in on this beach. There's this couple laying out on a beach, but the first thing you're really shown is like a viewfinder that you put like a quarter in that you could look out on the beach, and you just hear really heavy breathing. And immediately out of the gate, you're so uncomfortable because you're like, I really should not be watching this. And Frank goes and murders these people. You're not even shown his face. It's really just like jump you into, this is what you're in for. This is what this movie's gonna be like. And it never holds back. It really reminded me of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Film is very like grainy. It's shot almost like documentary style, it feels like. And it feels kind of like a sleazy grindhouse film or like a snuff film that you shouldn't be seeing. And I really credit the filmmakers to that, creating this environment that makes you feel very unsettled and uneasy and like you're watching something you're not supposed to be. One of the things that really helps the movie's atmosphere for me is the score from Jay Chataway. It's a very eerie synth score that has its ups and downs, and it reminds me a lot of like Halloween or a lot of movies from the 70s and early 80s. Really heavily reliant on synth, and it really sets the tone for you. Kind of like sleazy New York, and it's eerie and ambient, and it really sets the mood for the overall film. So I got to give a shout out to my boy Tom Savini, who's probably my favorite visual effects artist from the 70s and 80s. Does a fantastic job in this movie with an incredible head explosion. All the visual effects are really well done in this. Even makes a cameo in the film, and I thought that was really neat that he was able to be in the movie. But yeah, his visual effects there for 1980, it's incredibly brutal. Watching it this year, I really feel like it holds up and keeps that genuine intensity that the movie is going for. The movie focuses really heavy on just the fact that Frank is a psychopath. You're drawn into his psyche a little bit. First kill, aside from those people on the beach, is a prostitute that he pays, and you understand that there's something linked in his head between sex and the brutality of his murders. He even makes a comment, I'm not sure the exact quote, but something about like beauty and deserving to die. He seeks out these very beautiful women to murder, and so you're left questioning throughout the movie what's occurred in his past that has caused him to go insane, or what product turned him into a lunatic. Is it the product of his home environment? Is it just he's naturally insane? And I think that really adds to the movie that you as the audience member are left guessing. Why does he do these things? Why is he murdering people in this way? Because his signature is, after he murders these women, he scalps them, and then he takes their scalps back to his apartment building and nails the scalps onto these mannequin heads, and he talks to them and acts like they're real people. Left to the imagination at this point as to what is going on in his head. There's this scene where him and Anna go to a cemetery together, and he's reminded of one of his victims that he murdered, and he just starts having like a complete and total breakdown. And you start to ask yourself, does he feel any kind of sympathy for these people that he murders? Or is it just like something in his brain that's controlling him to do this? And that's what I think makes it such an engaging and interesting movie, is you're constantly left questioning what is wrong with Frank? Why is he the way that he is? And by the third act, you know, there's a big finale closer that's really great, adds a little bit more to the overall feeling that the movie's trying to give you. But I don't want to give it away. I think it's great just watching it and seeing it firsthand. That's the 1980 Maniac. I think it's a fantastic exploration of a psychopath. It's obviously a very brutal movie. It's really intense, not going to be for the faint-hearted. There's some really grisly and gruesome stuff in the movie, but I would definitely recommend it. Now I'm going to talk about the 2012 remake of Maniac, directed by Franck Khalfoun. So this is something I saw online. I wasn't even aware that this remake existed until I saw something posted online. It was like a photo that had Elijah Wood in it and was talking about it, and I researched it and was like, oh, this is a direct remake to the 1980. And I immediately, when I see stuff about remakes, I'll go on Letterboxd or like IMDb just to see the reviews. And it seems like this one is really polarizing to whether people like it or not. And I've talked about it a little bit before, but with remakes, the big thing about remakes is you want to do the director justice, but you also want to add your own spin to it. And I think you're going to take existing material and create something out of it that's your own. Yes, you can use the character names, the setting. A perfect example is the Luca Guadagnino Suspiria remake. It's taking material that, people cherish and love and hold very dearly, but also putting your own spin on it and adding your unique voice as a director. There aren't a lot of remakes that do that very well. And I was actually really impressed with this 2012 remake of Maniac. I think it has its problems. I definitely don't like it as much as the 1980 version, but I do think that it adds kind of a new spin to the Frank character, and it really provides some different context to Frank's psyche. First thing I want to talk about is Elijah Wood's performance. He does an incredible job in this movie. A lot of people, I feel like, don't give Elijah Wood enough credit. He obviously, you know, he made it really big with the Lord of the Rings films, but now he's very big in the horror community. He's a producer, he's an actor. I love the content that he's involved with. I really liked this movie, The Greasy Strangler, that he produced. That was fantastic. I recently watched a horror sort of thriller that he was in called Come to Daddy that was really great. He chooses awesome projects to work on, so that really got me excited about this Maniac, and his performance is fantastic. He gives such a creepy and off-putting performance. His shift and his personality, similar to what I talked about with Joe Spinell's performance, he can just turn on a dime, and I think that that's really impressive about his performance in this. First thing you'll notice out of the gate when you watch the 2012 movie is it's all shot first person. One of my issues with the film is there's a couple moments where it jumps out of that first person and you're just like brought back into a normal framed shot, which can be kind of jarring. There's a couple moments where it feels really intentional, and there's a couple moments that it just felt lazy on the filmmaker's perspective, but it's not enough to detract from the movie. I think putting you in that first person view already makes it even more uncomfortable. You really are jumped into Frank's character and these brutalities of these murders, and the sound design really adds to it. I mean, the breathing that Elijah Wood's character gives, just how unsettling it is, or when he talks to himself, he says things. A lot of these kills of these women are set up to where you're starting from him in his van, stalking them into a place, moving in with him, kind of seeing each thing. So you as an audience member, you know what's gonna happen, but you have to watch all of the horror and the brutality that's occurring, where the 1980s version, you get that. You get the establishing shot, you know, you see what's happening where Frank is, but being in that first person view adds something that's even more unsettling, and I think it's very effective. Nora Arnezeder plays Anna in this movie. She does a really great job as well. She's a French artist and a photographer who's in town doing an exposition about mannequins, and she loves mannequins, and she is taking photographs outside of Elijah Wood's shop that he runs, which is a little different than the original. He has a shop that his parents owned that he does repairs on mannequins. Whereas Joe Spinell's character in the original Maniac is just, he's an artist, so he's using mannequins for his art pieces. So in this movie, you're kind of flipped on that, and she's taking pictures of the outside of his shop, and they start to build a bond, and that's where the connection builds in this one compared to the introduction to Anna's character. Frank is much more normal. When you see him interact with Anna, it's very uncomfortable. He's not off-putting. There's this very drastic difference in, you know, the Frank from the 1980 film and the Frank from the 2012 movie. And I think Joe Spinell's performance is more effective than Elijah Wood's to me because of how he knows, his brain is able to split between being completely insane and acting a certain way to appease society. I think that's really impressive. This movie, Elijah Wood is always a little off-putting in all the circumstances. A couple times I asked myself the question, like, aren't these girls a little uneasy by the way that he's acting? He's never really completely normal. Like, even the first time he goes out with Anna, he has these breaks, and like the camera gets a little blurry, and he's always grabbing for his medication. Has this like meltdown moment, and she's off-put by it like a hair, but it's never to where she's like, I need to get myself out of this situation. She's always kind of there, and that's one of the things that I say is X from this one just a little bit, is you don't get that clear separation like in the 1980 version. The score in this one is also really good. It's by someone named Rob, just simply Rob. It's that synth 1980s-esque score, which I think really attributes to that atmosphere. This movie is a lot more reliant on the visuals. There's some kind of hokey CGI stuff in the movie, but most of the kills are incredibly brutal. This movie, and the big difference from the 1980 version, is this really focuses on how Frank's psyche was damaged. You're given a little insight to who his mother was, the relationship he has with his mother. He talks to himself to where it feels like there's this duality where it's either his younger self that he's arguing with or something in his head, and that's brought to the forefront a little bit more so the audience can have a better understanding of Frank's character compared to the 1980s version, where you're just left sort of to your imagination as to why he's so insane. And I guess that's left up to you as the viewer to decide which one of those things you like more. I personally like a little bit more ambiguity. I'm fine with the direction that the 2012 version went. I think that that's cool because it's putting a unique spin onto something that already exists. But I think the ambiguity of the 1980s Maniac and seeing Frank's character and just like knowing that this could be anything and sort of piecing that together in your head is a little bit more interesting for me. Similarly to what people say about the original Halloween and Rob Zombie's Halloween. The original Halloween, you have Michael Myers' character who is just a psychopath. We don't, if you take everything else out of context, Michael Myers is the embodiment of pure evil, murdered his sister for no reason, and is just on the hunt. Whereas Rob Zombie's Halloween, you get this backstory of, you know, broken home, seems to be abuse that was going on before he kind of snaps and starts killing people. And it's all up to you as an audience member as to which thing that you find more interesting. Yeah, so like I said, the 2012 version, I still really like it. I think it's worth watching. It's cool to see that vision from a director that, you know, is very different than the 1980s version, but still seems to pay homage and wants to get it right. Say, comparing the two, Frank's character, Joe Spinell, is a very big, menacing looking guy in the 80s version, where Elijah Wood's a little scrawnier. And I guess, you know, that does add to the fact that, you know, women might not be as like immediately off-put by his appearance to where they're drawn into his weaker nature. Compared to the 1980s version where Joe Spinell, you know, he's got this kind of mangly hair. He's just got a very like disturbing demeanor about himself to where women would be seemingly off-put, but when he's in those situations, he dresses himself up nice. He looks very presentable. So those are the kind of compare and contrast elements of the character that I find really interesting between the two. The look of both of these films is very different. Like I said, the 1980s version is very grainy and gritty, and it looks almost like a snuff film. This one is 2012, it's very polished. It looks really nice. It's very desaturated. It's a very like bland looking movie, but I think that's intentional. It adds to like the darkness of the film and just how like menacing everything is. It feels kind of grimy in its own way. I like the visual style of the 80s version more, but this movie, I think that the cinematography adds to what it's going for. The scores are really similar. I like the original 80s version a little bit better, but I think both of them attribute to the overall experience of the film. Overall, I would say if this is something that interests you, the idea of like diving into a character psyche that's very damaged and has a lot of problems, both of these movies are definitely for you. I will say they're very violent, they're very disturbing, but around the Halloween season, that's what a lot of people are looking for. So I would definitely recommend this if that's the type of movie that you find yourself entertained by. What do you guys think of Maniac, the 1980 and the 2012 versions? I gave all my thoughts and opinions. I'd love to hear you guys's. As always, I've got some more content coming up in the near future. I'll put some links up at the end of the video for some of my recent videos. As always, if you could like this video and subscribe for me, I really appreciate it. Lets me know you're watching and enjoying the content, and I look forward to putting out some more videos in the month of October. As always, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.